and breakfast show. Hope you're enjoying the morning show as much as we are here on Sky Channel 175. Well, it's that time now again to join our next guest, and that's Dave Mance of the Campaign for Christian Human Rights Organization. Is that correct?
That's right. So I work for CSW. We're a Christian human rights organization, and as Christians we speak up for anyone facing injustice because of their religion or belief.
Why do people face injustice?
Well, all kinds of reasons. We specialize in religious freedom, which is obviously a very hot topic at the moment with the rise of fundamentalism around the world. There are all kinds of reasons, but yeah, we work in countries, over 20 countries around the world, including those that you might expect where religious freedom violations happen most commonly, including Nigeria, Burma, Pakistan, Iran.
Okay, brilliant. And what is your organization doing in terms of improving on religious freedom?
So we're an advocacy organization, and our three key ways of working are advocacy, campaigning, and prayer. So in terms of advocacy, we're accredited at the UN to speak up for religious freedom there. We work with British governments, with in Brussels at the EU, and we go into the field, we record religious freedom violations, we write reports, we then report back to those in the corridors of power to really lobby and create space for change.
Oh, brilliant. In terms of campaign, what have you achieved so far from your campaigns?
So just recently, just earlier this year, for example, we saw the release of Nguyen Van Dai, a Vietnamese human rights lawyer who was a Christian lawyer but speaking up for, again, those of all religions or beliefs. So we saw his release. We most famously, 10 years ago, worked on the first human rights report on North Korea and saw the Commission of Inquiry there through the UN. So we've been working for nearly 40 years now and seen all kinds of victories, from those focusing on whole nations to speaking up for individuals and seeing them released from prison.
Right, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite radio presenters, James Well of LBC Radio. He often says on his program that religion is there to separate. What do you have to say to that?
I think the issue is really, regardless of religion or belief, whether you're Christian or atheist or any other belief, it's human nature, isn't it, that divides. And often when people misrepresent their faith, that's where problems arise. It's not about faith. For example, you look at some of the worst perpetrators of violations, Stalin, Mao, these were not religious people, they were secularists. So I don't think it's about religion itself. It's when men and women take those ideologies and do evil things in the name of them.
All right, and in terms of, there's always a struggle, but when they say, on the streets of London, they say the struggle is real, but then the struggle can be made unreal. What sort of problems, struggles, setbacks have you faced so far, in your personal experience?
For me, I don't really experience a great deal myself. Living in the UK, I think we have a lot of religious freedom in this country. My job really is to speak up for those in countries where, that you are at real risk of imprisonment, even death for your faith. So while, secularization is rising in the UK, we focus on working in countries where really your life could be at risk for your faith.
All right, I'm sure you've traveled let's start with Africa. Have you been to any African country?
Sure. So I was in Nigeria just...
Yeah, tell us, what did you observe of Nigeria in terms of religion? I mean, Nigeria is Africa's populous nation. We call it the giants or the elephant of Africa. So a big country like Nigeria, what did you observe accurately in terms of different religions?
It was my first visit to Nigeria. I was blown away by the people. I found it a tremendously beautiful and rich country. And I think there's huge richness there where we see people of different faiths speaking together and working together and living in harmony. But I saw a lot of violations where that wasn't going on. For example, we were in Kaduna State and Plateau State recording violations where Fulani militia had invaded villages, and we met some survivors whose homes had been burned, whose loved ones had been killed and shot and killed, and this has been going on now for several years. And so it was really disturbing. For example, we went to a quite remote village in Plateau State where just after curfew time, there was the shout went up, the Fulani
How
are
did
coming.
that feel to be, somewhere like Plateau State, different from, the Western world? How did that feel? Were you scared, or were you just okay? I mean, you look a very calm person, but I mean, how was that your experience in there, just individually?
Perhaps there was a little bit of fear there, but really...
What were you fearing? Is it the dogs?
I think just the fact that there'd been an attack only a few days earlier, but I knew that the security were there then, and actually there's less likely to be an attack where there's just been one. So, like I say, I really have not experienced these kind of injustices myself, and I'm just looking to speak up for those who have.
All right, and did you enjoy the food? Did you have any pepper soup? What Nigerian food did you eat?
I really got into the... what's the white stuff in the bag? Is it yam? I want to say yam, but it's not yam. Is it yam? It is yam.
Yeah, okay.
I really love that. I love just using your hands. I feel like that's a much more sensible way to eat. There's something about the texture of that which I really loved, and I loved goat. I've never eaten goat before, and so that was a real highlight.
If you want to taste a bit of that, there's a lot of Nigerian restaurants, especially in the southeast of London. If you get to Peckham or Campbell.
This is an invitation from you. We need to get dinner.
From me, definitely.
Great.
See me after the program, and I'll give you those details. But now let's talk of when you're in Nigeria. What sort of speeches or campaigns did you carry out, and what did you think you achieved in Nigeria?
Sure. I mean, really, I'm here today because I wanted to speak to you about the campaigning we're doing on the case of Leah Sharibu.
Yes.
And that's a case which has got a lot of attention, both here and in Nigeria. Those who work at CSW in Nigeria have close links with Leah and her family. And so we've been looking to really raise her case, particularly in these last few days as we've reached 200 days since her abduction.
Just for the viewers who are watching, we are aware of the case. What is the case about?
So Leah is one of 110 girls who were abducted from their school in Dapchi in Yobe State back in February. A month later, after negotiations with the government, those girls were released, the remaining girls were released, all except for Leah, and that's because she refused to renounce her faith. And so ever since then, we've been wanting to stand in solidarity with her, speak up for her, raise her case, both with the British government, at the UN Human Rights Council, and then, most recently, we've been working very hard on the campaign 200 Hours for 200 Days.
Well, the United Nations, the British government get millions of requests of your nature. How have they responded so far to this case?
We've seen amazing support from particularly UK MPs, for example. Tom Brake joined us on the protest this week. Dame Spellman, she wrote a very powerful blog. Another MP forwarded an early day motion. So we've seen some real encouraging responses there. I think what we're looking for now is an encouraging response from the ambassador, Nigerian ambassador here in London, and of course from President Buhari.
All right, brilliant. The same girl, she was trying to renounce her faith. What was her religion before she was abducted?
So she was the only Christian girl of all those abducted. And her classmates and her friends, who are all Muslim, even pleaded with her to just feign conversion in order to kind of placate the Boko Haram militants and just pretend to convert. But her faith is so strong that she chose she would not renounce Jesus, and so she chose rather to stay and watch her friends be driven away back to safety and back to their families.
All right, brilliant. Well, still talking of the young girl in Syria. Did you meet her? Did you have a chance to see her or talk to anybody close within her vicinity? Tell us more.
Yeah, so just a few days ago we reached 200 days since Leah's abduction. we've been holding a 200-hour protest and prayer vigil outside the embassy since then. And on day 200, we actually called Leah's mother, Rebecca, and spoke with her and just expressed solidarity to let her know the world hasn't forgotten Leah, hasn't forgotten her and her husband, as in hasn't forgotten Leah's mother and father and brother, and just to let them know we're still speaking up and we're not going to stop speaking up until we see the release of her daughter. And she was really appreciative of that, and we're so glad.
All right, well, the lovely Ben TV viewers are very, very supportive. What would you ask for in terms of support from the general public and the viewers, of course, watching this morning?
So we've seen an amazing response from those who want to speak up for Leah. You can do that if you visit our website, csw.org.uk, where you can get resources, you can write a letter, you can petition. If you're a praying person, then you can certainly use our prayer resources and pray for Leah. And we've seen amazing response from so many people who want to speak up for her. She's shown amazing faith and courage, and we've been inspired by that. So I hope you are too, and I hope you can join us in this campaign at csw.org.uk.
Brilliant. And how long has this campaign been going on for?
So we just passed the 200-day mark since she was abducted, since Leah was abducted. And like I say, we're going to continue being outside the Nigerian High Commission for one more day. That'll be 200 hours tomorrow at 5 p.m. But if we don't see her released, we're just going to keep speaking up in different ways and trying to raise voices for Leah.
All right. Okay. Speaking up in different ways. So if definitely it's going to go well. If it doesn't go well, just in case, what options are you going to take?
Do you mean if Leah isn't released?
Yes, that's right.
What we try and do with any campaign is escalate what we're doing. So
yes, how are you going to escalate it? We're so intrigued to know how you're going to escalate it. What actions are you going to take? You don't have to give away everything.
No, sure.
But then just tell us how you're going to try and escalate it. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, so
yeah, exactly.
You will get there. But tell us, if option 1 doesn't work, option 2 doesn't work, what's going to be option 3?
Yeah, there's a great quote which I think campaigners should always be mindful of, which is Mike Tyson, the great boxer. He said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the nose. And so we always have to be adaptable to plans. I would say particularly with elections coming up in Nigeria, we'll be focusing on using that as a point that President Buhari shouldn't be using this case for political gain, but should quickly negotiate. Leah's classmates, the government negotiated Leah's classmates to be released. And so regardless of what her faith is, she is an important human being, just as valid as anyone of any other faith. So we'll be pressuring President Buhari, with so many waiting to see, what's the outcome of the election. He really needs to do all he can at this point.
Brilliant. And, African governments, they face a lot of criticism from citizens for not delivering on campaign promise, not delivering on cases of this nature. Do you think the Nigerian government is doing what you'd expect them to do, so far from, being, visiting Nigeria, working, side by side? You've been in touch with His Excellency, the High Commission of Nigeria here in London. So do you think the Nigerian government has done so much, or if not, what would you like to see them accelerate in order to release Leah?
Yeah, I think I've been troubled by the lack of action on the case of Leah. I think I mentioned also earlier the case of, Fulani militia who are attacking Christians. And I think, again, that's a case where often it's been spun as clashes between farmers and herders, where in reality, for example, the village I visited where children and women and men were locked in a school and shot and massacred, that's not a clash. And so I'm really keen that the Nigerian government looks to expose truth and looks to act on cases like Leah's and on cases like the Fulani militia.
All right, just moving on now. You've been to different countries as well, isn't it, apart from Nigeria, carrying out this campaign. What other campaigns have you carried out and that have been successful?
So we've been, so we're speaking about Leah is part of our Faith and a Future campaign. And I think if you look over the last 10 years, we've really seen education rise up the international agenda as something everyone realizes is important. And, there's obstacles that stop young people from getting an education, like conflict or poverty or gender. But something that hasn't been recognized as much is religion, and so many young people are missing out on an education or a fair education because of their faith. So, for example, we've been campaigning in Pakistan, where all kinds of religious minorities, Hindus, Ahmadis, Christians, Sikhs, Shia Muslims, are not getting a fair education. Even things like in school, where school books themselves will denigrate those from religious minorities. So we've been, the Faith and a Future campaign has seen some really important steps in making sure that funding of textbooks is no longer, making sure that funding goes to textbooks that are not biased. And that may sound like quite why is that so important? But if you think about the formative experience of young people, when they're in school to learn, if they're learning that we are all equal and we're all of equal importance regardless of our faith, that is something which will stand with someone for life and will really set the tone of a whole society. And so we're really strategically targeting young people because we know that if we speak to young people, that's where we can begin to see change.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. Brings me to my next question. In terms of advice to the general public and especially young people, I would say personally, but according to what I have read, we've read stories where somebody's of a different religion, maybe Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc., or they could be Catholic, Seventh-day, Jehovah's Witness. And then there's a clash. Maybe that person is in love with the man or the woman, and it doesn't go well. The parents doesn't sit well with the parents because of that different Christian faith. How do you think that has played a negative impact in terms of society?
Yeah. CSW, as I said, is a Christian human rights organization. We believe that as Christians we should stand with anyone facing injustice because of their religion or belief. So whether you're atheist or Muslim, like you say. I think for me, we have to ensure that, first of all, we listen. So many problems occur where people aren't really listening and aren't really willing to have an open mind and listen to what the other person is saying before we make our judgments. So that's a key thing. I think we have to expand the virtues of tolerance. Because you are tolerant of someone else doesn't mean that you are compromising your own beliefs. You're just listening. You're just taking on board their viewpoint. And so I think that's where it begins. If you have those kind of breakdown in relationship in your life, I would just encourage you to begin by listening and trying to really understand where the other person is coming from.
Well, brilliant. You mentioned tolerance there. Can you give us an example, or rather an occasion or an experience where you've had to practice tolerance? I know tolerance is a very easy word to pronounce, but sometimes practically it's quite difficult. So tell us of an experience.
Well, it was interesting, earlier I was just speaking about being out on the streets, and as I said, we've been out in front of the Nigerian High Commission, and we saw an amazingly positive response from all those who were passing by. But of course, if you sit in London at a school desk, as we were, and open yourself up to passers-by, then there will always be some who want to denigrate you or mock you. And so, just this week, in fact, the weekend when I was there all on my own at that point, and some guys came and were kind of mocking me for what I was doing. But I wasn't even offended. I just remembered that God's with me. And
what did they say?
They were just being so stupid. The guy, he was kind of saying, I had this placard which was saying "Free Leah," and this guy was saying, "Everyone hates Leah," which is ridiculous. So I didn't even take him seriously. I just kind of enjoyed the fact that I know what I'm doing is something that I believe in and that God is with me, and so I just smiled and yeah, like you say, that's tolerance.
Okay, I mean, of course, you're a Christian human rights organization. So we'll give you a scenario, an example where you meet somebody who's not Christian, they're Hindu or Muslim, and they're skeptical to listen to you because you've come as with the label Christian. How would you manage, or rather, what would you do to convince that person that, look, I'm, yes, a Christian, but my goal is not what you're thinking? How have you, if you've ever experienced that, tell us. But I mean, how do you deal with a situation like that?
I really would point to our track record as an organisation. My colleague Benedict Rogers, he first started thinking about, because he started thinking about reaching out to those who weren't just Christians, and he visited an atheist man in prison for being an atheist in Indonesia. And when he arrived, the atheist said to him, why are you here? Why on earth have you come to meet me? You're a Christian, you're not an atheist. And so, I think it's by our actions that we should be judged. And so that's an example where he said, well, no, it's because I'm a Christian that I want to stand with you as an atheist. You're being persecuted because of your belief.
All right, and apart from the case of Leah, which we wish the best for Leah, what other difficult cases have you come across so far in your experience as a human rights organization fighting for faith and religion? What other struggles apart from the one in Nigeria have you faced?
Okay, so for example, at the moment we're also working on the case of 4 Christians in Iran, including Pastor Nadakani, who's being held again because he's...
Where is he from?
So he's Iranian.
Okay.
An Iranian pastor who's just trying to share his faith peacefully. He's trying to lead a church peacefully. And for these things, he's been imprisoned many times. So, we're standing with him and others who are imprisoned with him and their families, and we're speaking up for their release also. Okay,
I mean, I'm a Christian as well, very, faithful like yourself. Why do you think people actually have different, struggle? Why do people, I beg your pardon, have struggles in terms of religion? People, yes, it's normal for people to fight over money. If you owe me a few quids, if you owe me a few hundreds, I'll be chasing you. I'll be so frustrated. I'll take it personal. Like, Dave owes me £2,000, and up to now he's not picking up his mobile phone, but I see him active on Facebook every afternoon. So why do you think people have these differences with faith? I mean, you might have done a bit of research in the past.
I think, people...
I'll just stop you there. I think we'll take a quick break. And of course, when we come back, the breakfast show continues. Stay with us.
Our vision is to build your dream home. Everyone has a dream of owning a home in a serene and peaceful environment. With Bistan Group, you can get that dream come true. Most people working and living in Abuja have this housing challenge. At Bistan, we provide housing solutions. Visit our website on your screen or dial the number on your screen, or better still, visit our location at Wuse 2, number 10, Lobito.
And welcome to TKLS, the Kissy Lee Show. Nigeria's favorite comedian, award-winning actor, basketball.
Hello.
I'm 16. Would you say I'm old enough to move out now?
When I was in my girl band, the From Above girl band, that was managed.
Welcome back to the Ben Breakfast Show. Well, we're still with Dave Mance, who's the head of campaign at the Christian Human Rights Organization. Well, Dave, we don't have so much time with us, but we've enjoyed this conversation, or rather interview. Well, just to summarize, people would like to get in touch with this organization. Just give us your last words, or if there's anything that you feel you missed out during the course of the interview.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, please feel free to
yeah, well, I just thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share today. So our organization is a Christian human rights organization, and as Christians, we stand with anyone facing injustice because of their religion or belief. We're called CSW, and if you have been moved by the story of Leah Sharibu, the girl who refused to renounce her faith in exchange for freedom from Boko Haram, then you can join our campaign at csw.org.uk. And of course, we're speaking up not just for Leah, but we're speaking up for change throughout central and northern Nigeria to make sure that schools are properly protected, schools in vulnerable areas that are vulnerable to terrorist attack. And we want to make sure not only that Leah is freed, which we believe we will see Leah freed through our campaigning and prayer and advocacy, but also we want to stop this from happening again. And so we're really going to be campaigning very hard, calling on the Nigerian government to just ensure protection of schools that are in areas that are vulnerable. So thank you for standing with us, and thank you for being moved by Leah's story.
Well, thank you, Dave. That is well drafted and crafted script. Well, Dave, enjoy yourself, and we'll keep supporting the campaign.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that was Dave Mance joining us on The Breakfast Show. Well, we'll take another quick break, and when we come back, The Breakfast Show continues. Stay where you are.
Me in the studio today to
Group, our vision is to build your dream home. Everyone has a dream of owning a